The Grand Assembly Hall was the largest room in the known galaxy. Its curved walls stretched upward for nearly a mile. Carved from the living crystal of Nexus Prime, floating platforms held delegates from 12 different species, each one representing billions of lives across thousands of worlds. Light filtered down from artificial suns embedded in the ceiling, casting everything in a golden glow that was meant to inspire feelings of unity and peace. Ambassador Daniel Carter felt neither. He stood at the center of the speaking floor, a small human figure surrounded by giants. The Villanthi delegates towered above him on their platform, their silver skin reflecting the light like polished metal. The Erixans sat in shadow, their four eyes blinking slowly as they watched him with open contempt. The Maruvians, ancient and patient, observed everything with the cold calculation of a species that had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. Daniel cleared his throat and spoke into the silence. Honored members of the Galactic Council, he began, keeping his voice steady. I come before you today to request humanitarian aid for the human colonies along the Variant border. 3 weeks ago, Kethral raiders attacked 4 of our settlements. They killed over 60,000 civilians. They destroyed hospitals, schools, and food production centers. The survivors are dying. They have no medicine. They have no food. Winter is coming to those worlds, and without help, another 200,000 people will not survive. He paused, looking up at the assembled delegates. Some of them were not even looking at him. The Erixan delegate was speaking quietly to an aide, laughing about something. Daniel continued anyway. We are not asking for weapons. We are not asking for soldiers. We are only asking for food, medicine, and temporary shelter. We will pay for these supplies. We will transport them ourselves. We simply need the Council to approve the emergency trade permits so that we can. Denied. The word came from the highest platform, where Consul Drethmaros of the Villanthi sat upon a throne of white stone. He had not even let Daniel finish speaking. Daniel blinked. I'm sorry, Consul. Perhaps I was not clear. We are not asking for charity. We are asking to purchase. I understood you perfectly, Ambassador Carter. Drethmaros rose from his throne, his silver robes flowing around him like liquid metal. He was nearly 9 feet tall, thin and elegant in the way that his species had been engineered to be over millions of years. When he smiled, it did not reach his cold blue eyes. The Council has already discussed your petition in private session. We have decided that no aid of any kind will be provided to the human colonies. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Not all of them were unkind. Daniel noticed that the Sundari ambassador, an elderly female named Irelkith, was watching him with something that looked almost like pity, but the Erixan delegate was laughing openly now. He leaned forward on his platform, his massive bulk casting a shadow over the speaking floor. Perhaps the little humans should not have expanded so far beyond their ability to defend themselves, he said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. You breed like insects and spread like a disease. Is it any wonder that the galaxy's predators have taken notice? Daniel felt his hands tighten into fists at his sides. Behind him, he could sense his delegation growing tense. Commander Lavrar Mitchell had taken a step forward, her military training making her want to respond to the threat. Science-attached Kevin Moore was pale with anger. His tablet clutched so hard in his hands that his knuckles had turned white, but Daniel raised a hand slightly. Keeping them still. May I ask, he said quietly, what humanity has done to deserve such treatment from this council? We have broken no laws. We have honored every treaty. We have paid every tax and tariff that was asked of us. Our colonies were attacked by raiders, not by our own mistakes. Why are we being punished? The Maruvian ambassador spoke for the first time. His name was Thelvakis, and he was over 800 years old. His voice was like dry leaves rustling in an autumn wind. You ask what you have done, Ambassador? You have existed. That is enough. Your species is young and aggressive. You expand too quickly. You breed too fast. You lack the patience and wisdom that comes with age. The elder species of this council have watched countless young races rise and fall over the millions of years. Most of them destroyed themselves. Some of them had to be destroyed by others. We have decided that humanity must be contained. Contained, Daniel repeated. Indeed. Consul Drethmoros was smiling again. The Council has passed Resolution 7741. Effective immediately, human expansion is frozen. You will not colonize any new worlds. You will not establish any new stations. Trade sanctions will be placed on all human goods. Any human vessel found outside your current 17 systems will be treated as a hostile invader and destroyed. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Daniel looked around the chamber. Some delegates looked uncomfortable. The Sundari ambassador had closed her eyes as if she could not bear to watch. But most of them were looking at him with cold satisfaction, waiting to see how the little human would beg. He did not beg, for a long moment. Daniel Carter simply stood there in the center of the Grand Assembly Hall, surrounded by species that had decided humanity was not worthy of basic compassion. He thought about the children dying on those colony worlds. He thought about the parents who had sent desperate messages begging for help. He thought about his own daughter, who was waiting for him back on Earth, trusting that her father would make the galaxy understand, and then something changed in his eyes. It was a small thing. No alien in that chamber could have understood what it meant. But Commander Mitchell saw it, and she felt a chill run down her spine. She had served with Daniel Carter for 15 years. She had seen him negotiate with hostile governments, face down pirates, and remain calm in the middle of a war zone. She had never seen him look like this. Daniel nodded once, slowly. "Very well," he said. His voice was quiet. There was no anger in it. No desperation. No plea for reconsideration. Just two simple words spoken with absolute calm. He turned and began walking toward the exit. His delegation followed without a word. Consul Drethmoros called out after him, his voice mocking. "Nothing to say, Ambassador? No threats? No promises of revenge? Your species does so love its dramatic speeches." Daniel paused at the threshold of the great doors. He turned back to look at the council one last time. His face was completely still. "You will not hear from us again," he said. And then the doors closed behind him, and humanity was gone. The council laughed. The Erickson delegate made a joke about humans finally learning their place. Consul Drethmoros returned to his throne, satisfied that the matter was settled. None of them noticed that Ambassador Irelkith had not laughed. She sat on her platform with her ancient eyes fixed on the doors through which the humans had departed. And her hands were trembling. She was the only one in that chamber who understood what she had just witnessed. She had seen the look in Daniel Carter's eyes at the end. She knew what it meant when a human stopped talking. It meant they had stopped negotiating. And started planning. 6 months passed, and the galaxy forgot about humanity. At first, the council species celebrated. Trade flowed more smoothly without human merchants undercutting prices. Colony worlds that had been contested were now claimed without opposition. The Velanthi expanded into 3 systems that humans had been eyeing. The Ericksons took 2 more. Everyone agreed that Resolution 7741 had been a brilliant success, but then the merchants began to notice something strange. A Velanthi trading convoy passed through the outer edge of human space on their way to a distant market. It was a common route, one that usually took them past the human colony on Kepler 442b. The colony had been there for 30 years, home to nearly 2 million people. The merchants had traded with them many times before, but when they arrived, the colony was gone, not destroyed. Not abandoned in the usual sense, simply gone. The buildings were still there, standing empty under the pale sun. Vehicles sat in the streets where they had been parked. Doors hung open. Food rotted on tables. But there were no people, no bodies, no signs of struggle or evacuation. 2 million humans had vanished without a trace. The merchants reported their findings to the Velanthi government, who dismissed it as an exaggeration. Perhaps the humans had simply moved to another world. Perhaps they were hiding underground. It did not matter. Humans were no longer the council's concern, but the reports kept coming. Maruvian science vessel entered the Sol system to take measurements of Earth's sun. They found the entire system empty. Earth cities were dark. The great orbital stations that had surrounded the planet were gone. Mars, which had been home to over 100 million humans, showed no signs of life. The Jovian moons, the asteroid mining operations, the deep space research stations, all of them were silent. Senior researcher Thelvonis was assigned to investigate. He was young for a Maruvian, only 300 years old, but he was brilliant and thorough. He took a team of 50 scientists into human space and spent 3 months scanning every world, every station, every ship that the humans had left behind. His report to the Council was deeply unsettling. 14 billion humans had lived in the 17 systems that comprised human space. All of them were gone. There were no bodies anywhere. There was no evidence of weapons fire, disease, or natural disaster. The humans had not fought. They had not fled in panic. They had simply stopped existing. Thelvonis presented his findings to a special session of the Council. "It is as if they walked away," he said, his voice troubled. "Their belongings are still in their homes. Their ships are still in their hangars. Their food is still in their storage facilities. But the humans themselves have vanished completely. I have no scientific explanation for what has occurred." The Council debated for hours. Some delegates believed the humans had committed mass suicide out of shame and despair. Others thought they had fled to another galaxy using some secret technology. The Erixan delegate, whose name was Krathmal, laughed and suggested that the humans had simply been too stupid to survive without the Council's guidance. But Ambassador Erolkeith of the Sundari did not laugh. She was very old now, nearly at the end of her natural lifespan. Her people were one of the founding species of the Council, ancient beyond measure. They had watched civilizations rise and fall for millions of years. They kept records that other species had long forgotten. When the debate had quieted, she rose to speak. "I have searched our archives," she said, her voice thin but steady. "I have found references to this phenomenon before. Not with humans, but with other species, long ago. Species that were pushed too far. Species that were given no choice but to adapt or die." The Council listened in uncomfortable silence. "There is an old word for what happens when a species faces extinction," Erelketh continued. "We call it the chrysalis. It is when a species transforms itself so completely that it becomes something new, something that its enemies cannot recognize or understand." Consul Drethmaros waved his hand dismissively. "You speak of legends and fairy tales, Ambassador. The humans were a primitive species. They could not have undergone any such transformation." "Could they not?" Erelketh turned to look at him, and there was something cold in her ancient eyes. "We humiliated them. We denied them aid while their children died. We told them they were vermin, not worthy of basic compassion. And then we trapped them in their own territory and left them to face their enemies alone." She paused, letting her words sink in. "When an animal is cornered, it does one of two things. It either dies or it becomes something far more dangerous than it was before. We cornered 14 billion humans, Consul. We gave them no options. And now they are gone." Krathmal snorted. "You suggest we should be afraid?" "Of what? Empty planets. Silent ships? The humans are dead or fled. Either way, they are no longer our concern." Erelketh looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke words that would haunt the Council for centuries to come. "You should not have made them go silent," she said. "Silence is how humans hunt." The Council dismissed her warning. They returned to their normal business, confident that the human problem had solved itself. But in the weeks that followed, strange things began to happen. Ships traveling through the empty space near human territory reported unusual readings on their sensors. Shadows that moved when nothing was there. Whispers on communication channels that resolved into nothing when analyzed. A feeling of being watched that their crews could not shake. THEL single quotes Vaughn has continued his research in secret. He analyzed the quantum signatures left behind in human space and found something that made his blood run cold. There were traces of dimensional manipulation far beyond anything the Council had ever seen. Someone or something had opened doorways into a realm that existed beneath normal space-time. A realm that Thalvonis could not scan or detect. He called it the Quiet. Whatever the humans had become, they were not gone. They were hiding in a dimension that the Council could not perceive. They could be anywhere. They could be everywhere, watching, waiting, planning. Thalvonis requested an emergency meeting with the Council to share his findings. But before he could present his research, the Kethril disappeared, the same raiders who had attacked the human colonies, the ones whose actions had started this entire crisis, sent their war fleet into the Demon Nebula chasing a damaged freighter. 60 ships entered the nebula. None of them came out. Search parties found nothing. No wreckage, no bodies, no distress signals. It was as if the entire Kethril armada had simply ceased to exist. 2 weeks later, the Kethril homeworld went dark. 3 billion Kethril vanished overnight. Their cities remained standing. Their meals sat uneaten on their tables. But every living Kethril was gone, and on the wall of the Kethril High Command, written in perfect Kethril script, someone had left a message. It said, "You killed our children. Now you will understand what that feels like." The galaxy finally began to understand what Irelkith had tried to tell them. The humans had not disappeared, they had evolved, and they had come back. Fear spread through the galaxy like a disease. The destruction of the Kethril had sent shockwaves through every species. 3 billion lives erased in a single night. An entire civilization removed from existence without a single shot being fired. No one had seen anything. No one had heard anything. The Kethril had simply been there one moment and gone the next. The Council convened an emergency session. For the first time in centuries, every delegate attended in person. Even the most distant species, those who usually sent only holographic representatives, made the long journey to Nexus Prime. They needed to see each other's faces. They needed to know they were not alone. Consul Drethmoros stood before them, his silver face pale with something he had never felt before. He did not want to admit what that feeling was, but deep in his chest, he knew it was terror. "We must remain calm," he said, his voice less steady than usual. "What happened to the Kethril was a tragedy, but we do not yet know who is responsible. It could be a natural phenomenon. It could be a new species we have not yet encountered. We must not jump to conclusions. It was the humans." The voice came from Ambassador Irelkith. She sat in her hovering chair, her ancient body wrapped in ceremonial robes. She looked tired, as if she had not slept in days. But her eyes were sharp and knowing. "We all know it was the humans," she continued. "We can pretend otherwise if it makes us feel better, but pretending will not save us. Whatever they have become, they are taking their revenge. The Kethril attacked their colonies. Now the Kethril are gone. Krathmal, the Erixan delegate who had laughed at humanity all those months ago, slammed his massive fist on his platform. Then we destroy them. We gather every fleet in the Council and hunt them down. No species threatens the Council and survives. Hunt them where? Thalvonis asked quietly. He had been given permission to address the Council directly, something rarely granted to scientists. We cannot find them. We cannot see them. We cannot even detect them with our most advanced sensors. They exist in a dimension we cannot reach. They could be standing in this room right now, and we would never know." A chill ran through the assembly. Several delegates looked over their shoulders, their eyes scanning the shadows of the great hall. Thalvonis continued, pulling up holographic displays of his research. "I have analyzed the quantum signatures left at every site where humans or their enemies have disappeared. The pattern is consistent. Someone is opening doorways into a dimension I call the Quiet. This dimension exists beneath our own reality. It is invisible to all our technology. Whoever enters it can move freely through normal space without being detected." He paused, letting the implications sink in. "The humans have discovered how to step outside of our universe," he said. "They can go anywhere. They can see everything. And when they choose to act, they can remove entire populations without leaving any evidence behind. We are facing an enemy who has become, for all practical purposes, invisible and unstoppable. The council fell into chaos. Delegates shouted over each other. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for surrender, for apologies, for anything that might stop the vanishings before they spread further, but the vanishings had already begun. 3 days after the emergency session, Krathmul disappeared from his private estate on Oryx Prime. His guards reported nothing unusual. The security systems showed no intruders. But when they entered his bedroom in the morning, he was simply gone. On his pillow, written in perfect Erixan script, were the words, "We remember your laughter." Panic erupted across Erixan space. The military went on high alert. Every ship was mobilized. Every sensor was pushed to maximum range. But they found nothing. The humans were ghosts, striking without warning and vanishing without trace. Over the next month, 47 high-ranking officials across Council space disappeared. Generals who had spoken against humanity. Politicians who had voted for Resolution 7741. Merchants who had profited from the trade sanctions. All of them were taken in the night, leaving nothing behind but messages written in their own languages. You called us vermin. Now you know what it feels like to be hunted. Your cruelty taught us how to be cruel. We asked for medicine for our children. You gave us silence. Now we give you the same. The messages were always calm, always precise. There was no anger in them, no threats of what would come next. Just simple statements of fact, as if the humans were keeping a record of debts being repaid. The council tried everything. They posted guards around every official. They installed new security systems. They even tried to negotiate, broadcasting messages of apology into human space. But there was never any response. The humans did not want to talk. They had said they would not be heard from again. They meant it. Ambassador Arelkith called another emergency session. This time, she did not wait for permission to speak. She walked to the center of the speaking floor, the same place where Daniel Carter had stood 1 year ago, and she addressed the council with bitter words. "We created this," she said. "Every one of us. We could have helped them. They came to us with a simple request. Medicine for their sick, food for their hungry, shelter for their homeless. And we laughed at them. We called them vermin and insects. We trapped them in their own space and left them to die." She pointed at Drethmaros, who sat on his throne with fear in his eyes. "You told them they were not worthy of compassion. You forced them to find another way to survive. And now that they have found it, you are surprised that they are angry?" Drethmaros tried to speak, but Irelkith cut him off. "The ancient texts of my people speak of something called the chrysalis of rage. It happens when a species is pushed beyond its breaking point. Instead of dying, they transform. They become something new, something harder, something that exists only to make their enemies pay for what was done to them." She lowered her voice, and somehow that made her words even more frightening. "That is what we have created. The humans did not just evolve. They ascended. They have become beings of pure will, living in a realm where our rules do not apply. They can reach us anywhere. They can take us at any time. And they will never forgive us for what we did." A long silence fell over the council. Finally, someone asked the question that everyone was thinking. "What do we do?" Irelkith closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were filled with a deep and terrible sorrow. "We wait," she said. "We hope that they have had enough revenge. We hope that somewhere in those transformed minds there is still a trace of the mercy they once asked us to show. And we pray that they choose to stop before they erase us all." She turned and walked toward the exit. Her ancient bones moving slowly dotted the door. She paused and looked back at the council one final time. "We should have been kind," she said. "It would have cost us nothing. And now it may cost us everything." She left, and the council sat in terrified silence, waiting for the next message, the next vanishing, the next reminder that they had made an enemy of the wrong species. In the shadows of the Great Hall. In the spaces between seconds, something watched them, and it remembered everything. 1 year to the day after Daniel Carter walked out of the Grand Assembly Hall, a ship appeared at Nexus Prime. It came without warning. One moment the space around the council station was empty, and the next moment it was there, hanging motionless against the stars. It was unlike any vessel in the galactic database. Black as the void itself, its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. There were no visible engines, no weapon ports, no identification markings. It was simply a shape carved from darkness. Watching the station with invisible eyes, every alarm in the council fleet screamed to life. Warships scrambled from their berths. Defense platforms charged their weapons. Thousands of soldiers prepared for an invasion that seemed certain to come, but the black ship did nothing. It waited. For 3 days, the council attempted to communicate with the vessel. They broadcast greetings in every known language. They sent probes, which passed harmlessly through the ship as if it were made of shadow. They even fired a warning shot across its bow, a massive burst of plasma that would have destroyed any normal vessel. The shot passed through the ship and continued into deep space. The vessel did not move. It did not respond. It simply waited. On the 4th day, a small shuttle emerged from the black ship's hull. It moved slowly toward the station, landing in the main diplomatic hangar without requesting permission. The council guards who surrounded it could not detect any life signs inside. Their weapons shook in their hands as the shuttle door opened. A single human woman stepped out. She was of average height, with dark hair cut short and eyes that seemed to hold depths no mortal being should possess. She wore no uniform, no armor, just simple gray clothing that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. When she moved, the air around her rippled strangely, as if reality itself was uncertain of her presence. Her name, she told the guards, was Captain Megan Torres. She requested an audience with the full Galactic Council. The guards led her to the Grand Assembly Hall. They walked quickly, not because they were in a hurry, but because they could not stand to be near her for long. Something about her made their minds itch, made their thoughts scatter, made them feel like prey in the presence of a predator they could not see. When she entered the hall, every delegate fell silent. They watched her walk to the center of the speaking floor, the same floor where Daniel Carter had stood 1 year ago. She looked up at them without fear, without anger, without any expression they could read. Then she spoke. "I am Captain Megan Torres of the vessel Endless Quiet. I have been sent to deliver a message from humanity." Her voice was strange. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, echoing from the walls and the floor and the ceiling, as if she were speaking from a dimension slightly adjacent to their own. Consul Drethmaros found his courage somewhere deep within his chest. "You have murdered council citizens. You have destroyed entire civilizations. What message could you possibly bring that would justify—" "We have not murdered anyone," Megan said calmly. "The Kethril are not dead. Neither are the others we have taken. They are simply elsewhere. Somewhere beyond your reach, living out their lives in a place where they can harm no one. Whether they are comfortable or suffering depends entirely on how they behaved when they were here." She let that sink in. "Humanity has not come for revenge. If we wanted revenge, you would all be gone already. We came to explain what we have become and to deliver our final message to the species that made us this way." She raised her hand and the air shimmered. A holographic recording appeared in the center of the hall, larger than life. It showed the council session from 1 year ago. It showed Daniel Carter standing on the speaking floor, asking for help. It showed the delegates laughing at him. It showed Krathmol calling humans vermin. It showed Drethmaros passing Resolution 7741. With a smile on his face, the recording played all the way to the end, to the moment when Daniel said, "You will not hear from us again," and walked out. Then it stopped. "We came to you for help," Megan said, her voice soft but carrying to every corner of the vast hall. "Our children were dying. We had done nothing wrong. We had broken no laws. We had honored every agreement. All we asked for was medicine and food. Basic compassion. The kind of mercy that any decent species shows to another. She looked up at Drethmaros, and he felt his soul shrink under her gaze. You laughed at us. You called us vermin. You locked us in our own territory and left us to face our enemies alone. You did not just refuse to help us. You enjoyed watching us suffer. She paused, and the silence was absolute. So we changed ourselves. We found the quiet, the dimension that exists beneath your reality. We learned to move through it, to see through it, to act through it. We became something that your weapons cannot hurt and your sensors cannot find. We became ghosts in the machinery of the universe. Thelvonis leaned forward, his scientific mind overcoming his fear. How? How is such a thing possible? What technology could allow? Not technology, Megan said. Will, when you have no other choice, when death is the only alternative, you find ways to survive that should not be possible. Humanity has always been good at that. We are the species that survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We are the species that clawed its way out of the mud and reached for the stars. You thought we were primitive because we were young. You forgot that youth means we have not yet found our limits. She smiled. And it was not a kind smile. You pushed us until we had no limits left. The council sat in stunned horror. Unable to speak, unable to move, Megan continued. We spent this past year deciding what to do with our new abilities. We considered many options. We could destroy you. All of you. Every council species, every world, every station. We could erase you from existence so completely that no one would ever know you had existed at all. It would be easy. It would be fast. And part of us wanted to do it. She let the words hang in the air. But we chose not to. Not because we forgive you. We will never forgive you. But because becoming like you would mean you had won. You tried to teach us that the strong should abuse the weak, that cruelty is natural, that mercy is a foolish waste. We refused to learn that lesson. She straightened, and her voice took on a formal quality. This is humanity's final message to the Galactic Council. We are leaving this galaxy. We have found other realms, other dimensions, places beyond your understanding. We have no interest in conquering you or ruling over you. We simply want nothing more to do with you. The delegates began to relax slightly. Perhaps this was over. Perhaps the nightmare was ending, but then Megan smiled again. Before we go, however, we want you to understand something. We will be watching you forever. From the quiet, we can see everything. Every cruel word. Every unjust law. Every time a powerful species mistreats a weaker one. We will see it all. Her eyes swept across the assembly. And if you ever again do to another species what you did to us, we will come back. Not to negotiate. Not to warn. We will simply remove you from existence and give your worlds to those you tried to destroy. She turned and began walking toward the exit. Drethmaros called out, his voice desperate. Wait, you cannot just leave us like this. Living in fear forever, never knowing if you are watching. Never knowing if we have offended you. Megan stopped at the threshold. She turned back one final time. Yes, she said softly. That is exactly what we are leaving you with. The same fear that our colonists felt when the Kethril attacked them. The same helplessness our children felt when they were dying and no one would help. You wanted us to learn our place in the galaxy. Now you will learn yours. She looked at them with eyes that held no mercy. Be kind to each other, she said. Be fair. Be just. Because we will be watching from the silence. And we will remember everything. Then she walked out, and the doors closed behind her. And the black ship vanished from Nexus Prime as if it had never existed. The council sat in the empty hall for hours. Unable to move, unable to speak, haunted by the knowledge that somewhere in the darkness, humanity was watching forever. The years that followed were the darkest in the history of the Galactic Council. No one slept peacefully anymore. Every species, from the mighty Velanthi to the humble trading races on the galaxy's edge, lived with the constant awareness that they were being watched. Shadows seemed deeper than before. Silences felt heavier. Even in the brightest rooms, surrounded by friends and family, people could not shake the feeling that invisible eyes were observing their every action, Some species tried to pretend nothing had changed. They went about their business, made their trades, fought their small wars. But even they jumped at unexpected sounds and looked over their shoulders when walking alone. The humans had infected the galaxy with a fear that could never be cured. Consul Drethmaros resigned from his position 6 months after Megan Torres departed. He had aged terribly, his silver skin gone dull and gray, his eyes haunted by nightmares he could not escape. He retreated to a small estate on a remote Valanthi colony world. Far from politics and power, it did not help. Every night, he dreamed of the human children who had died because he had denied them medicine. He saw their faces, thin and pale, looking at him with eyes that asked the same question over and over, why? When he woke, he could not tell if the whispers he heard were from his dreams or from something standing just outside his perception. He spent his final years writing a memoir. He called it The Price of Contempt, and in it he confessed everything. Every cruel joke he had made about humans. Every moment of satisfaction he had felt when denying their petition. Every time he had called them vermin and meant it. The memoir became required reading for diplomats across the galaxy. Not because anyone forced them to read it, but because everyone wanted to understand how such a catastrophe had happened. They needed to know what mistakes had been made so they could avoid making them again. Senior researcher Thelvonis continued his studies of the quiet dimension for the rest of his long life. He built sensors and probes and machines that pushed the boundaries of known science. He spent 3 centuries trying to pierce the veil that separated normal space from the realm where humanity now existed. He never succeeded, but in his research, he discovered something that both comforted and terrified him. The quantum signatures he had detected were not just in the places where humans had appeared. They were everywhere. In every system, on every world, in every room where thinking beings gathered, the humans were not just watching sometimes. They were watching always. They had spread themselves across the entire galaxy, existing in the quiet like fish in an endless ocean. Observing everything that happened in normal space, Thelvonis published his findings in a paper that became one of the most influential scientific documents in history. His conclusion was simple and chilling. Humanity has become a universal constant. They are as present as gravity and as invisible as time. We cannot escape them. We can only accept that we live our lives under their eternal observation. He died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 800, surrounded by students who had spent their careers continuing his work. His last words were a question he had asked himself every day for 500 years. I wonder if they forgive us yet. No answer came. Ambassador Irelkith lived longer than anyone expected. Her species had mastered the art of extending life, and she used every technique available to stretch her years as far as possible. She felt it was her duty to witness what would happen to the galaxy she had failed to protect. She watched the Galactic Council slowly dissolve over the following centuries. It was not destroyed or overthrown. It simply became irrelevant. The species that had once dominated it were too afraid to act boldly, too paranoid to trust each other, too haunted by the past to build a future. They withdrew into their own territories and rarely spoke to one another except when absolutely necessary. In the Council's place, a new organization arose. It was called the Compact of Kindness, and it was founded by the younger species who had not been part of the original insult against humanity. They built their government on a simple principle: every species, no matter how young or weak, deserved compassion and respect. Aid would never be denied to those in need. Cruelty would never be tolerated. It was not a perfect system. No system ever is. But it was better than what had come before. Irelkith attended the Compact's first assembly as an observer. She sat in the visitors' gallery, old beyond measure, watching the young delegates debate and argue and eventually agree on laws that would govern the galaxy for generations to come. At the end of the session, a young Valanthi diplomat approached her. He was barely 200 years old, a child by Maruvian standards, but he had been elected to represent his people in this new era. "Ambassador," he said respectfully, "may I ask you something?" Irelkith smiled with lips that were thin and dry. "Of course, young one. Do you believe the humans are really watching us?" Even now, after all these centuries? She looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned her ancient eyes to the shadows in the corners of the great hall, the spaces between the light where anything could hide. They told us they would watch forever, she said softly. And in all my years of studying humanity, I learned one thing above all else. They do not make promises they do not intend to keep. When a human says forever, they mean forever. The young diplomat shivered slightly. Does that frighten you? Irelkith considered the question carefully. It used to, she admitted. For many years I could not sleep without wondering if they would come for me in the night. I had voted against helping them, you see. I had not laughed like the others, but I had not stopped them either. I was guilty too, she paused, gathering her thoughts. But as the centuries passed, I realized something. The humans are not watching us to punish us. They are watching us to make sure we become better. Every time a powerful species considers mistreating a weaker one, they must ask themselves, what would the humans think? What would they do? That fear has prevented countless acts of cruelty. It has saved millions of lives that would otherwise have been lost to the old ways. She looked at the young diplomat, with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. The humans turned their anger into justice, she said. They could have destroyed us, but instead they chose to change us. They became the conscience of the galaxy, the silent reminder that our actions have consequences. Is that frightening? Yes, but it is also, in its own strange way, a gift. The young diplomat thought about this for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. I understand, he said. Thank you, Ambassador. Irelkith watched him return to his delegation, young and hopeful and determined to build a better future. She smiled again, a real smile this time, filled with something she had not felt in centuries. Hope. That night, alone in her quarters, Irelkith closed her eyes for the last time. She was ready. She had lived long enough to see the change she had prayed for. The galaxy was becoming kinder, one generation at a time. Just before sleep took her, she whispered into the darkness, I do not know if you can hear me. I do not know if you even care what I have to say. But I want you to know that I am sorry. We were wrong. All of us. And I hope, wherever you are, you have found peace. For a moment, just before she passed, she felt something. A warmth in the darkness. A presence that seemed to lean close and whisper back. She could not understand the words, if there were any words at all. But she felt their meaning in her heart. We know. Irelkith smiled and let go. In the centuries that followed, the galaxy grew and changed. Species that had once been enemies became friends. Wars became rare and brief. The compact of kindness expanded until it included every known civilization, bound together by laws of fairness and mutual respect. And in every culture, in every language, on every world, there was a legend. It was told in different ways depending on who was telling it, but the core was always the same. Long ago, the story went, there was a species called humanity. They came from a small blue world orbiting an ordinary yellow star. They were young and eager and full of hope. They reached out to the galaxy seeking friendship and found only cruelty. So they left. But before they went, they made a promise. They swore to watch over the galaxy forever, to make sure that no species would ever again be treated as they had been treated. They became guardians, invisible and eternal. Protecting the weak from the strong, parents told this story to their children when they misbehaved. Teachers told it to their students when they were unkind. Diplomats whispered it to each other before they spoke harsh words. Be kind, they said. Be fair. Be just, because somewhere in the silence, the humans are watching, and they remember everything. In the darkness between stars, in the quiet spaces beneath reality, something stirred. It had no form that could be seen, no voice that could be heard. But it was there, as it had always been, as it would always be. It watched the galaxy spinning below, full of life and hope and endless possibility. It saw the children playing on 1,000 worlds. It saw the diplomats negotiating peace. It saw the scientists reaching for new horizons, and somewhere deep in whatever passed for its heart, humanity smiled. They had become something more than human. They had become legend of dot and legends never die.